When humanity's last hope meets eternity's oldest rage, the stars themselves begin to bleed. The Covenant thought they understood war until they saw what true damnation looks like. Every portal opened, every ring discovered, just brings them closer to something ancient and unforgiving. What happens when a galaxy built on faith confronts the one being that gods themselves fear? The slipspace rupture tore across Reach's stratosphere like an infected wound. Naval officers on the UNSC Pillar of Autumn watched in horror as Covenant ships emerged through the dimensional tear, their plasma weapons already charging. Captain Jacob Keyes gripped the command console, his weathered face illuminated by emergency lights. This was not how humanity would end, not today. Then something changed. The rupture pulsed, its quantum edges fluctuating with an energy signature unlike anything Oni had catalogued. The tear in reality deepened, widened, as if something from the other side was forcing its way through. The Covenant Armada paused their assault, their communications suddenly filled with panicked chatter. "Captain, that's not a Covenant signal," Cortana's voice resonated through the bridge. The AI's holographic form flickered with concern. "That's not even Forerunner. We're detecting radiation patterns consistent with highly concentrated argent plasma. It's nothing in our database." The rupture flared crimson, a shade of red that stirred primal fear in every human witness. The slipspace tear vomited forth a single figure, trailing fire and dimensional residue. The figure crashed into the hull of a Covenant cruiser with such force that the alien vessel's shields collapsed instantly. Titanium armor, scorched and ancient, reflected the distant light of Reach's sun as the figure tore through the cruiser's command deck like a bullet through flesh. The Doomslayer had arrived. Keyes watched through the tactical feed as the armored warrior ripped through Covenant forces with methodical brutality. No wasted motion, no hesitation, only purpose, driven by something far beyond mere human rage. "What am I looking at, Cortana?" Keyes asked, unable to tear his eyes from the footage. "Unknown combatant," Cortana replied, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. "But sir, he's killing Covenant elites with his bare hands." On the dying Covenant cruiser, the Slayer moved like vengeance incarnate. Each step crushed alien technology beneath boots stained with the blood of demons from 1,000 hells. The ornate helmet, with its characteristic visor, revealed nothing of the man within, if man he still was. His armor bore symbols that predated human language, marks of battles fought in realms beyond comprehension. An elite zealot charged, energy sword humming with destructive potential. The Slayer sidestepped with impossible speed, grabbed the elite's wrist, and forced the alien's own blade through its mandibles and skull. As the creature collapsed, the Slayer claimed the sword, studying it for only a moment before discarding it for the modified shotgun strapped to his back. Across the Covenant battle net, a new word spread among the alien forces. The Sangheili did not have a term for demon that fully captured their sudden terror. To them, this being was Kreshid, the nameless one who devours holy light. The remaining Covenant ships began to retreat, pulling back from both the human vessels and their own compromised cruiser. The Slayer had turned the floating wreckage into an impromptu hunting ground. "Sir," a young officer called out to Keyes, "the intruder is accessing Covenant systems. He's downloading their navigational data." Cortana's avatar flashed red. "He's looking for something. Captain, I recommend we establish contact before a massive explosion tore through the Covenant cruiser as its reactor went critical." The ship disintegrated in a blinding flash, pieces of its hull scattering across Reach's orbit. For a moment, the bridge, crew of the Autumn fell silent, assuming the mysterious warrior had been vaporized with the vessel. Then the radar pinged. A small object was moving toward them at incredible speed. The Slayer, using the explosion's propulsive force, had launched himself directly at the Pillar of Autumn. His armor's thrusters made minute adjustments as he hurtled through the vacuum of space. "Brace for impact," Keyes shouted. The Slayer crashed into the Autumn's hull, the reinforced metal buckling under the force. Security camera footage showed him punching through an external airlock, his fist creating an entry point where engineering logic said none should exist. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as the ship's systems detected the breach. Inside the Pillar of Autumn, Marine squads moved into defensive positions. Their assault rifles seemed suddenly inadequate against what they had just witnessed through the ship's external cameras. The Slayer stood in the airlock chamber, his armor venting excess heat as internal systems compensated for the transition from vacuum to atmosphere. He looked up at the nearest security camera, and for a brief, chilling moment, it seemed as if he was staring directly at Cortana through the ship's surveillance network. "Captain," Cortana whispered, "he knows I'm here." In the corridors of the Autumn, Marines waited with sweating palms on their triggers. The heavy footsteps of the Slayer echoed through the deck plating, each impact a promise of approaching judgment. The first squad positioned at the bulkhead took aim at the sealed door. The door didn't open. It was torn from its frame, twisted metal shrieking in protest. The Slayer stood in the breach, shotgun raised. Before any Marine could fire, he lowered his weapon slightly, the universal signal of temporary non-aggression. "Hold your fire," the squad sergeant shouted, though his own weapon remained trained on the intruder. For a tense 30 seconds, neither side moved. The Slayer's helmet surveyed the human defenders, assessing their weapons, their armor, their readiness for combat. His posture shifted almost imperceptibly, the tension in his frame easing from imminent violence to wary tolerance. "This is Captain Jacob Keyes of the UNSC Pillar of Autumn." The captain's voice came through the corridor speakers. "Identify yourself and state your intentions." The Slayer remained silent, but reached slowly to his waist where an equipment module was attached to his armor. He activated a holographic display that projected a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with a particular system highlighted. It was not in UNSC charted space. "He wants to show us something," Cortana said privately to Keyes. "I think he's trying to communicate." "Bring him to the bridge," Keyes ordered. "Full escort. And Cortana, prepare the Cole protocol if this goes sideways." As the Marines cautiously guided the Slayer through the ship, crew members pressed themselves against bulkheads to clear a path. The warrior's armor bore scars that told stories of violence beyond human comprehension. Some plates had been melted by energies that shouldn't exist in physical space. Other sections were reinforced with materials not manufactured by human hands. When the Slayer reached the bridge, he stopped at the threshold, examining every officer, every station, every potential threat and exit. His focus eventually settled on Cortana's holographic form. "You're not human," Cortana stated, her algorithms calculating countless possible origins for the armored figure. "At least, not entirely anymore." The Slayer reached toward her hologram. His gauntlet passed through the projection, but sensors in his armor interfaced with the ship's systems. Data flowed between them, faster than the ship's security protocols could monitor. Cortana's avatar flickered violently. "Captain, he's showing me images. A different dimension, a facility on Mars, something called the UAC. Demons, so many demons. And the Covenant. They're about to find something worse than the Halos." The Slayer pulled back, his helmet tilting slightly as if awaiting their understanding. "The Covenant found something," Keyes translated, his tactical mind rapidly processing the implications. "Something you fought before." A single deliberate nod from the Slayer confirmed the captain's assessment. "Sir, new contacts." A sensor officer called out. Covenant fleet emerging from slipspace. They're heading for the coordinates in his star map. Keyes studied the tactical display, then looked back at the silent warrior. "You want our help to stop them." The Slayer's response was to chamber a round in his shotgun. As the Pillar of Autumn altered course to pursue the Covenant fleet, UNSC technicians worked to establish better communication with the Slayer. Dr. Catherine Halsey, present on the ship to oversee the final preparations of the Spartan 2 program, studied the warrior's armor with unconcealed fascination. "The metallurgical composition doesn't match anything in our database. she explained to Keyes and Cortana in the ship's laboratory. It's as if the material itself is partially phased into another dimension. The power source is putting out energy readings that should be impossible without causing a localized singularity. The Slayer stood impassively as scanning equipment passed over his armor. He had allowed this examination only after Cortana had shown him the approaching Covenant fleet through the ship's long-range sensors. "What about his weapons?" Keyes asked. Halsey gestured to the shotgun, now sitting on an examination table. Deceptively primitive in appearance, but the ammunition contains trace particles that react with organic matter on a subatomic level. "It doesn't just kill, Captain, it destroys. There's something almost sacred about its engineering." The Slayer retrieved his weapon, apparently satisfied that the humans had learned enough. Through a series of crude but effective gestures, he indicated that time was short. "The Covenant ships will reach their destination in 6 hours. Cortana informed them. "Based on the data exchange, I believe they've discovered an ancient portal structure. Not Forerunner in origin, but something that predates them. Something that leads to what his armor's databanks call Hell." The word hung in the air, its theological weight at odds with the scientific environment. "Hell," Keyes repeated. "You're telling me the Covenant is about to open a portal to an actual Hell dimension?" "I know how it sounds," Cortana replied, "but the energy signatures match what we detected when he arrived. The Covenant believes they've found a weapon to use against humanity, but they don't understand what they're tampering with." The Slayer loaded shells into his shotgun with practiced precision, each one sliding into place with a decisive click. His preparations had the solemn quality of ritual, of rites, performed countless times before impossible battles. "How do we stop them?" Keyes asked. The Slayer activated his equipment module again, projecting schematics for what appeared to be a bomb. "That's not a UNSC design," Halsey noted. "It's called a BFG," Cortana translated from the data she'd accessed. "Big. Friendly gun. Except that's not really what the F stands for. It's designed to destroy the portal by overloading it with the same energy frequency it channels." Keyes studied the schematics. "Can we build this?" With his guidance and the Autumn's manufacturing facilities, yes, Halsey replied. "But we'll need to get close enough to deploy it directly into the portal's event horizon." The Slayer nodded once, then pointed to himself. "He intends to deliver it personally," Cortana observed. As the Autumn's fabrication plants worked to construct the BFG, the Slayer prowled the ship like a caged predator. He spent hours in the armory, examining UNSC weapons with the critical eye of a master craftsman. The MA-5B assault rifle earned a dismissive grunt. The M6D Magnum pistol received a nod of approval. When he came across a jackhammer rocket launcher, he hoisted it with one hand, testing its weight and balance before adding it to his growing arsenal. In the ship's gymnasium, Marines gathered to watch as the Slayer conducted what could only be described as a warm-up routine. He moved through exercises that would have exhausted a Spartan, his armor appearing to weigh nothing as he performed feats of strength and agility that redefined human limitations. "Is he one of yours?" a Marine asked Dr. Halsey, who had come to observe. "Some kind of Spartan prototype?" "No," Halsey replied, her voice hushed. "What he is. It's beyond our science, beyond our understanding of human potential." When the Slayer finished his preparations, he found Master Chief John 117 waiting for him by the hangar bay. The Spartangent II super soldier stood at rigid attention, his MJO LNIR armor, polished and ready for combat. "Sir," Chief addressed the Slayer, instinctively recognizing a kindred warrior. "Captain Keyes assigned me to your strike team. The mission is to deploy the BFG and ensure the Covenant cannot access the portal." The Slayer regarded the Spartan, measuring him with a glance that had evaluated countless adversaries across dimensions. After a moment, he gave a single, approving nod. Though they had emerged from different hells, one forged in the fires of human warfare, the other tempered in the crucible of demonic realms. They recognized in each other the same indomitable will. As the Pelican dropship prepared for launch, Cortana's voice came through the chief's helmet comm. "I'm transferring a portion of my subroutines into your armor, Chief. Someone needs to translate his intentions during the mission." The AI fragment uploaded into the MJOLNR system, creating a temporary bridge between the two armored figures. As Cortana established the connection, a flood of sensory data overwhelmed her algorithms, impressions of endless battles, of a rage so pure it transcended emotion and became purpose. The briefest glimpse into the Slayer's experiences forced her to partition memory segments to preserve her core functions. "My God," she whispered through the Chief's internal speakers. "He's been fighting this war for thousands of years." The dropship launched, accompanied by a squadron of longsword fighters for escort. As they approached the coordinates, the true scale of the situation became apparent. The Covenant had found a planetoid at the edge of charted space, its surface covered in structures that resembled neither human nor known alien architecture. The angular buildings were constructed of a material that absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating an impression of infinite depth. At the center of the installation stood an immense circular platform, surrounded by Covenant forces establishing a perimeter. Energy readings fluctuated as their engineers worked to activate the ancient technology. "The portal is still dormant," Cortana reported, "but they're making progress. At current rates, they'll have it operational within 30 minutes. The Slayer checked the BFG, now assembled and pulsing with barely contained energy. The weapon hummed with a frequency that made the dropship's metal frame vibrate in sympathetic resonance. "We'll insert here." Chief indicated a landing zone on the tactical display and approach from the southern quadrant where their defenses are thinnest. The Slayer had a different plan. He pointed directly at the center of the Covenant formation, then to himself. "That's a frontal assault into the heaviest concentration of enemy forces," Cortana translated, though the strategy needed little explanation. The Slayer's response was to move toward the dropship's rear hatch. "Wait, we're still in atmospheric insertion," the pilot protested. "You can't just—" The Slayer opened the hatch. The sudden decompression caused warning alarms to blare throughout the craft. Without hesitation, he leapt into the void, the BFG secured to his back, his trajectory aimed directly at the heart of the Covenant deployment. "Well," Chief said, checking his assault rifle, "I guess we're providing a diversion." As the Slayer plummeted through the planetoid's thin atmosphere, his armor's systems calculated the optimal entry vector. Covenant anti-aircraft plasma burned past him, the targeting algorithms unable to compensate for his speed and unconventional approach. He angled his descent toward a Covenant command post, the impact point selected for maximum tactical disruption. The Slayer hit the ground like a meteor, the kinetic energy dispersed through his armor and into the surrounding terrain. The shockwave flattened the nearest alien structures and sent Covenant soldiers flying in all directions. Before the dust settled, he was moving, shotgun roaring as he carved a path of destruction toward the portal platform. Elsewhere, the Master Chief led UNSC Marines in a coordinated assault on the Covenant's southern flank. The diversionary attack drew significant enemy forces away from the central platform, though the aliens quickly realized this was not the primary threat. "He's making remarkable progress," Cortana informed Chief as they pushed through Covenant defenses. "But they're bringing in heavy armor to block his advance." A pair of Wraith tanks hovered into position, their plasma mortars arcing toward the Slayer's position. He dodged the first blast, the superheated plasma melting the ground where he had stood moments before. The second shot struck closer, the concussive force sending him sliding across the rocky terrain. The Slayer regained his footing and assessed the situation. The Wraiths were too distant for his shotgun, and the surrounding terrain offered little cover. He reached for the rocket launcher appropriated from the Autumn's armory, raised it to his shoulder, and fired. The first rocket struck the lead Wraith's gravitational drive, causing the tank to crash into the ground. The second rocket hit the disabled vehicle's plasma core, triggering a chain reaction that engulfed both tanks in blue-white fire. As the Slayer advanced through the burning wreckage, a Covenant dropship descended directly in his path. Its troop bay doors opened to reveal a Covenant Special Operations team led by a massive brute chieftain. The hulking alien stepped forward, brandishing a gravity hammer with runes etched into its handle. "The hierarchs have named you Abomination," the brute growled in heavily accented human language. "Your skull will adorn the holy rings." The Slayer's response was to discard his emptied rocket launcher and draw the shotgun once more. The brute charged, covering the distance between them with surprising speed for its bulk. The gravity hammer swung in a wide arc that would have pulverized a normal human. The Slayer sidestepped, the hammer's gravitational pulse distorting the air where he had stood. As the weapon completed its arc, he stepped inside the brute's guard and fired the shotgun point-blank into its chest. The alien's armor absorbed much of the blast, but the force staggered it backward. The Slayer pressed the advantage, each shotgun shell weakening the brute's defenses. The chieftain roared in frustration and pain, swinging the hammer with increasing desperation. On its final swing, the Slayer caught the hammer's shaft, stopping the weapon mid-strike. For a moment, they stood locked in a contest of strength, the brute's massive muscles straining against the Slayer's implacable grip. Then the Slayer twisted, wrenching the hammer from the alien's grasp. In one fluid motion, he reversed the weapon and brought it down upon the brute's head with such force that the gravitational pulse activated on impact, collapsing the chieftain's skull into a singularity of bone and brain matter. The remaining Covenant troops hesitated, witnessing their leader's brutal end. The Slayer turned toward them, the bloody gravity hammer gripped in one hand, his shotgun in the other. The aliens broke formation, fleeing in disorganized panic. "The Covenant forces are pulling back from your position," Cortana informed him through a commandeered Covenant communication frequency. "But something's happening at the portal. They've accelerated the activation sequence." At the center of the installation, Covenant prophets had ordered their engineers to bypass safety protocols in their desperation to access the portal's power before the Slayer could reach them. Energy surged through ancient conduits as system after system came online, awakening technologies that had lain dormant since before the Forerunners arose. The circular platform began to rotate, segments shifting to form intricate patterns that channeled dimensional energies. The space above the platform shimmered, reality itself, growing thin as the barrier between dimensions weakened. "Chief, we have a problem," Cortana warned through the Spartan's comm. "The portal is opening prematurely, and there's something waiting on the other side." The tear in reality widened, revealing a glimpse of a realm beyond normal comprehension. The landscape visible through the portal was a nightmarish fusion of organic and technological elements. Pulsating flesh merged with machinery, bones formed into circuitry, blood flowing like data through veins of corrupted metal. The Covenant prophets gazed upon this revelation with rapturous awe, believing they were witnessing the divine realm promised by their faith. Their error became apparent moments later when the first entities emerged from the portal. They resembled no life form catalogued in Covenant or human records. Twisted amalgamations of flesh, bone, and burning energy, they moved with predatory purpose toward the assembled Covenant forces. Their forms varied, some hulking monstrosities with multiple limbs, others lithe and serpentine, but all radiated malevolence that transcended biological imperative. These were not simply alien, they were demonic, hatred given form and function. The Covenant troops opened fire, their plasma weapons cutting through the first wave of demons. But for each one that fell, 3 more emerged from the widening portal. The prophets' exultation turned to terror as they realized their mistake. This was not salvation, this was damnation. The Slayer observed the unfolding catastrophe from his position halfway to the portal. He had seen this scenario play out on countless worlds across innumerable dimensions. The familiar rage filled him, not hot and uncontrolled, but cold and focused, the rage of an executioner who had carried out the same sentence through eternity. He charged toward the portal, cutting through both demons and panicking Covenant with mechanical efficiency. Each movement was economized for maximum lethality, each shot placed with surgical precision. Demons recognized him, their behavior changing from predatory to defensive as ancient instincts warned them of his approach. Some even retreated toward the portal, preferring the familiar hells from which they came to the vengeance that pursued them. Master Chief and his Marines arrived at the edge of the central platform, providing covering fire as the Slayer advanced. The Spartan had fought many enemies, insurrectionists, Covenant, hostile environments, but the creatures emerging from the portal triggered a primal revulsion that his training barely controlled. The BFG needs to be deployed directly into the portal's event horizon, Cortana reminded them, but the energy readings are off the charts. Anything approaching the threshold will experience massive dimensional stress. The implication was clear. Delivering the weapon might be a one-way mission. The Slayer reached the edge of the platform, now slick with the blood of Covenant and demons alike. He activated the BFG, its power cells humming as they built toward critical charge. The weapon's targeting systems locked onto the center of the dimensional tear, calculating the precise trajectory needed to ensure maximum destructive effect. A massive demon, larger than the others, emerged through the portal. Its body was a mountain of corrupted flesh, arms ending in blades of bone that pulsed with unholy energy. A crown of horns adorned its skull, and its eyes burned with recognition as they fixed upon the Slayer. Energy signature identifying as Cyberdemon in his armor's database, Cortana informed Chief. It knows him, the Cyberdemon roared, a sound that contained millennia of hatred. It charged across the platform, each footstep cracking the ancient material. The Slayer stood his ground, the BFG raised as its charge approached maximum. The weapon isn't fully charged, Cortana warned. You need another 30 seconds. The Slayer had dealt with this particular demon before, across multiple incarnations and dimensions. He knew its patterns, its weaknesses, its blind spots. As it closed the distance, he waited until the last possible moment, then dashed forward, sliding beneath the creature's massive form. He fired his shotgun upward, targeting the less armored underside of the demon. The Cyberdemon howled and pivoted with surprising agility, one bladed limb slashing where the Slayer had been moments before. Its other arm transformed, flesh and bone reconfiguring into a cannon that fired projectiles of concentrated argent energy. The first blast caught the Slayer as he regained his footing, the impact sending him sliding across the platform, dangerously close to the edge. His armor absorbed much of the energy, but warnings flashed across his HUD as systems struggled to compensate for the damage. The BFG, still strapped to his back, continued its charging sequence, now at 70% capacity. Master Chief provided, covering fire from his position, assault rifle rounds distracting the Cyberdemon momentarily. We need to buy him more time, he told his Marines. Focus fire on the demon's cannon arm. The coordinated barrage drew the creature's attention. It turned toward the new threat, its cannon arm swiveling to target the humans. Before it could fire, the Slayer was moving again, leaping onto the demon's back with inhuman strength. He drove his fist into the junction where flesh met mechanical components, ripping out pulsating cables that sprayed caustic fluid. The Cyberdemon thrashed, trying to dislodge him, but the Slayer clung to its body with one hand while using his other to unstrap the BFG. The weapon had reached 90% charge, its housing hot enough to melt standard armor plating. With a final heave, the demon managed to throw the Slayer off. He landed near the portal's edge, the dimensional energies causing visible distortions in the air around him. The Cyberdemon charged again, determined to finish its ancient enemy. The BFG reached full charge just as the demon closed the distance. The Slayer raised the weapon, its targeting systems locking onto the creature's chest. He pulled the trigger. The weapon discharged a sphere of pure argent energy that struck the Cyberdemon with apocalyptic force. The blast tore through the demon's body, reducing it to atoms in an expanding sphere of green fire. The energy continued onward, following its programmed trajectory into the heart of the portal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to contract around the entry point. The portal began to collapse, dimensional energies folding inward as the BFG's discharge created a cascading failure in the ancient technology. "The portal is destabilizing," Cortana announced. "But the reaction is more violent than anticipated. We need to evacuate immediately." Demons still on the planetoid's surface howled as their connection to their home dimension severed. Some dissolved into ash, others fought with increased desperation, knowing they were now stranded in an alien reality. The Slayer stood at the edge of the collapsing portal, his armor's systems struggling to maintain integrity in the face of dimensional flux. He turned to look at Master Chief and the Marines, then back at the imploding tier in reality. His posture conveyed a decision made long ago, a duty that transcended survival. "Wait," Chief called out, realizing the Slayer's intention. "We can find another way." But the Slayer had already made his choice. With a final nod to his temporary allies, he leapt into the collapsing portal. The swirling energies engulfed him, his armor momentarily visible as a silhouette against the dimensional fire before the portal collapsed entirely, leaving nothing but a scorched circle on the ancient platform. In the aftermath, UNSC forces secured the installation. Covenant survivors were taken prisoner or eliminated, while any remaining demons were hunted down with extreme prejudice. The technology that had created the portal was carefully documented, then destroyed under Dr. Halsey's supervision. On the bridge of the Pillar of Autumn, Captain Keyes studied the final sensor readings from the portal's collapse. "Could he have survived?" he asked Cortana. The AI's hologram appeared, her expression uncharacteristically solemn. "The energy patterns at the moment of collapse suggest a dimensional translation rather than destruction. I believe he was pulled back to his origin point, or perhaps to another reality entirely. So he's still out there, fighting," Keyes mused. "Yes," Cortana agreed. "In another hell, against other demons." Master Chief stood silently at the edge of the briefing room, his armor still bearing scars from the battle. He knew what he was doing, sir. It wasn't his first portal. It won't be his last. The Spartan had recovered something from the battlefield, a single shell casing from the Slayer's shotgun. He now placed it on the briefing table, the metal still warm to the touch. "Cortana, what did you learn from his armor's systems?" Halsey asked, examining the casing with scientific curiosity. "Could we replicate any of it for the Spartan program?" "No," Cortana replied firmly. "His enhancements weren't just technological, they were metaphysical. His armor, his weapons, even his body, they were all designed to channel something that our science can't explain. A power earned through endless combat, through refusing to yield even when death itself seemed certain." "A shame," Keyes commented. "We could use more like him in this war." "With all due respect, sir," Chief said, "I don't think the universe could handle more than one." As the Pillar of Autumn prepared to depart the planetoid, long-range sensors detected a Covenant fleet approaching. Their mission wasn't over yet. Another battlefield awaited, another desperate stand against overwhelming odds. But somewhere beyond normal space, beyond the dimensions mapped by human or Covenant science, the Slayer continued his eternal crusade. He had stepped briefly into their war, their reality, but his own conflict never ended. For as long as Hell's legions threatened the multiverse, he would be there, shotgun in hand, wading through the hordes with cold fury and unstoppable determination. Rip and tear until it is done. 6 months later, when the Master Chief discovered the first Halo ring, he noticed something odd about the flood forms he encountered. They moved differently than those documented in Forerunner records, more aggressive, more direct in their attacks. And occasionally, when the infection was particularly intense, the Spartan would glimpse strange runes burned into the flesh of fallen combat forms, symbols that resembled those he had seen on the Slayer's armor. The boundaries between dimensions had been weakened. Something of the Slayer's essence had crossed over, infusing this reality with an echo of his unending rage. Even the Flood, ancient and adaptable as they were, had been changed by the brief presence of a warrior from beyond their conception of existence. And in the darkest hours of the Human Covenant War, some Marines swore they heard the distant report of a shotgun where none should be, followed by the death screams of Covenant forces who had encountered something worse than Spartans in the shadows of forgotten worlds. The legend spread in whispers among both human and Covenant ranks tales of a green-armored demon who appeared when the battle was fiercest, who left nothing but broken bodies and spent shell casings in his wake, and who vanished as suddenly as he had come. The war between species continued, but beneath it ran a deeper current, a cosmic conflict that had spilled over into their reality. The dimensions had been pierced once. They could be pierced again, and somewhere in the space between worlds, the Slayer waited, ready to answer the call of battle once more.